Hello, and welcome to the Cass Health Podcast, the show where we hope to connect our community with healthcare information that's relatable, understandable, and useful to your life, and where you get to know better the neighbors providing your care here. I'm your host, Ann McCurdy, and today I'm joined by
Kat Neiman.
And in today's episode, we're talking about Kids ENT Month with our guest, Dr. Rick Rinehart. And before we get started, 2 quick disclaimers. First, the comments in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of Cass Health. Second, the information in this podcast is not intended to be construed as personal medical advice. Always consult your primary care provider with your questions and concerns regarding your health. So to get started, welcome, Dr. Rinehart.
Thank you for having me.
We really appreciate you making time today to come chat with us about Kids ENT Month. And to start off, we'd just like to start easy with some get-to-know-you questions. So these are just some rapid-fire questions, so we get to know the man, right. Dr. Rinehart.
I'll do my best.
All right, so where are you from?
Presently I'm from Clive, but I was born in Ames, Iowa, and I'm born and raised Iowa kid, so all my education here. And now I'm in Atlantic. Oh, I'm not living here, but spending my time here.
Excellent, and we're happy to have you.
And favorite sports team?
Oh, I wanted Packers Chiefs, but I made it through the Super Bowl yesterday. And I don't really have a favorite team, but I grew up being a Packers fan. So, but anymore, I really just want a competitive game, which we had yesterday, so that was fun.
It was a good game.
It was good. But from Ames, not a big Cyclone fan?
Well, I was born there, and so I would say, I was for a while, but then I did my medical school and my residency in Iowa City. So I spent almost a decade there. So I've invested a lot in both of those towns,
so
financially and otherwise. So yeah. So again, I want a good game, but I see the merits of both of those fan sets as I've spent so much time in both places.
And if you're cooking dinner to impress, what are you making?
Oh, I'm not a very impressive cooker, but I'm the Sunday brunch guy. So I think after church, I think my wife tells me how wonderful it is, but it's just because she wants me to cook one day out of the week. So I usually put together oftentimes some leftovers of the week, but venison sausage, hash browns, eggs, nothing too difficult. But yeah, I'm the Sunday brunch guy.
Okay, so $50. We're giving you $50 to spend here in Atlantic. Where are you going? What you buying?
I'm probably going to the Locker. I haven't been there yet, but I've heard that you guys have a couple of pretty decent lockers around here, and I'm kind of an outdoorsman kind of guy, and I like meat products and things of that nature, so maybe looking for something to barbecue and see what the Locker had.
Yeah.
An excellent choice.
Yeah, both of our lockers are fantastic.
Favorite holiday?
Christmas Day. I'm a Christmas baby.
Aw, that's
double
pretty
whammy.
Cool.
Yeah, and I'm a Catholic boy, and so it's a big day. Me and baby Jesus, right?
You and baby Jesus. He's your birthday boy,
he gets all the good stuff, right? I get like one present for Christmas and my birthday.
Okay, what will we never catch you doing?
Karaoke. I'm not going to get up on stage and try and entertain people with my singing voice.
We won't make you today.
No.
We won't make you today. I know there's a microphone involved, but
there is.
No singing today.
I got some chills there when I was thinking about
it. What's better, the book or the movie?
In a prior lifetime, I would say the book when I had more time to read books. But I've been so busy in my medical career, and special effects have gotten so good, I've really enjoyed movies a lot. But now that I'm slowing down a little bit, I'm starting to read a little bit more, so we'll see. That might shift again.
Any stupid human tricks?
No, I don't really have anything stupid. I'm not big on being stupid.
Do you still know all the words to a particular song? Maybe a flashback?
I might think that I do, but my wife gets a pretty big kick out of when I try to sing songs, and she'll ask me, what is it that you said right there? And, so I'm pretty bad at lyrics, I guess. I'm more of I like the beat, but apparently fill in words that aren't necessarily part of the song. So
some of those funny misheard lyrics then.
Yeah, yes. So that's probably another reason why I'm not doing karaoke.
High school and childhood nickname?
Rhino. I don't know why. Rinehart. But it was easier when they're yelling at me on the athletic field. So that kind of stuck. Yep. Could be worse.
It could be, absolutely. Next or dream travel destination?
I'm going to take my father, who's getting older, and my brother and my sister, my younger brother and sister, and we're going to go to Alaska. I have a buddy who has a 65-foot boat up there and, fishing and doing the Alaska adventure thing a little bit. So I'm going to maybe do that this summer.
That'll be
Should
so
be awesome.
Cool. Mm-hmm.
Great experience to have.
Yeah,
and
especially
make
if
those
our
memories
dad
together.
can't do it anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's get to know a little bit about your career and your background. And I always like to start with, why medicine?
Mm-hmm. I don't know. That's a great question. My dad always wanted to be a doctor. He had me when he was 19 and went into construction. And I think he always pushed me for an interest in sciences, and I had an aptitude for it. When I was finishing up Iowa State, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. When I was evaluating those things, I knew that being a doctor was something that I had the work ethic to do, and I'm not a big gambling type of guy. I probably would have done great in business, but that seems so much more uncertain. It was sort of something that I knew was a great field, a noble field, would be good for my family, and that I could suck it up and get through the training required. And so I kind of chose that path, more intellectually speaking, I think, at the time.
Then even more in depth, so why ENT/head and neck surgery?
I did a lot of teaching in medical school and through residency, and I have an academic appointment in Iowa City that I did a lot of teaching. And one of the things that I came to find is that early in your medical career in medical school, people sort of figure out one of two things. They're going to go into the primary medical field or into a surgical field. That seems to be the first sort of, fork in the road. And I knew fairly early on I wanted to do something surgical. Along those lines, then it sort of becomes, okay, you're going to do general surgical or one of the subspecialties, And I thought again, I wanted to have a family, and I didn't want to live in the hospital and be on call all the time and be rounding and lots of sick people who may or may not get better. And so that was my vision of what general surgery was, right, wrong, or otherwise. And so I decided I'm going to be a surgical subspecialist. And then I just thought that ENT had a complex anatomy, real intricate, difficult anatomy that would, keep me entertained and intellectually focused, and it could see little kids to old people to cancer to plastic surgery to, this really diverse field that I just wouldn't get bored in. Plus, people usually get better. Not a lot of them in the hospital all the time. And so again, for me, kind of a intellectual choice of what I thought would be the best long-term decision for my particular skill set.
So really thinking about that work-life balance and finding something that you knew was going to work for you and for having a family and
exactly.
long-term and keep you interested intellectually too. So
yeah.
And becoming an ENT, can you talk to us a little bit about some of the education and training you've had and your work experience too?
Learned a lot of hard work from my dad. I did a lot of construction. That's how I paid for college. I didn't really have a lot of opportunity to go anywhere other than Iowa City for medical school because I just couldn't afford anything else. Medical school is 4 years after residency or after my medical school years. And that's when I decided I wanted to do ENT. Then you do a year of internship, which I did in Des Moines at Iowa Methodist, which is like a general surgical year. And then you have to do 4 years of residency in your head and neck surgery training stuff. And I did that in Iowa City. I was married at that time. My wife and I thought, oh gosh, we've outgrown Iowa. I met her. She was living in Chicagoland area, and I thought that'd be fun. We should, So we interviewed 17 residency programs across the nation, and it was the first time I ever looked outside of Iowa for my training or education. But I did really well in medical school, and so it opened the doors for me to do other things possibly. And so, gosh, I went like Harvard and UCLA and all the fancy Vanderbilt and Michigan, and I just looked everywhere. And I ended up in Iowa City, and
so
I thought
17 interviews, and you still were like, oh,
I know,
wow.
I didn't know how good I had it there. At the time, that was the number one ENT program in the nation, and I also knew it was also possibly one of the most difficult. They had some pretty tough instructors there, and so. But they also said that they knew me and they liked me and they would take me if I stayed there. And so I thought, how bad can I do to be in the best program in the country? Again, I thought I can suck it up and get through this amount of effort to get through it. But it was pretty difficult.
So you find yourself staying in Iowa with the most rigorous program. And
yeah.
I know you don't like to brag, but you ended up graduating top of your class.
Yep.
And
Yep.
and so you've had this really distinguished career so far. I mean, you've practiced in Des Moines for a long time. So I'd like to ask, you've been in Des Moines and have a prestigious career, and now you're here.
The
tell
10
us about
minutes
the
you've been
decision.
talking to me, you know how thoughtful I am about how I think about what I'm going to do. And so when we finished my ENT program, I did graduate number one in my class. And again, we thought we'd outgrown Iowa. And so we looked back to when we were dating my wife when she lived in like Lincoln Park, Wrigleyville, going to Cubs games, and back when we were young and fun. And so I found the number one practice in that area, and I just called the head guy out of the blue and said, "I'm coming to town." And he's like, "Crap," and hired me on the spot.
Yeah.
So we went there for 4 years, and then we decided that having a family in the suburbs of Chicago isn't quite as exciting as being young and single in the suburbs of Chicago.
Yeah.
And that we missed family, and we missed education in Iowa, and we missed the people of Iowa and the values here. And so we moved back to Des Moines area where both our families were from in 2000. And I've had a great career there, to be honest with you, extremely great career there. And I'm really still in the throes of my career. But I think between COVID and other things, it caused me the first time in my life to kind of hit the pause button and again survey my surroundings and say, you know what, from the standpoint of my family, my personal life, I'd rather slow down a little bit, focus some of my attentions outside of medicine. And my good friend Matt Wersch, who's a household name in this area, and I went to medical school with Matt. I think we were on a ski trip together, and Matt's like, "Rhino, you need to come to Atlantic." And so I started looking at it, and coming out here as a little satellite clinic initially. I really started liking it, and so I've kind of made a leap of faith to come out this way. So far it's been great.
It's Kids ENT Month, so we'd like to talk to you in particular about some kids' issues. So we'll just start with, what are the common reasons that you see kiddos?
Yeah, I think that probably the number one thing people think about are, ear infections and throat and tonsil things. And certainly, the younger kids, like the toddler, preschool, it's a lot of ear tubes and ear infection problems. The grade school kids, it's a lot more of the tonsil and adenoid things and strep throats and all of that. And that encompasses the variety of the things I do, probably the vast majority that are in surgery. We see lots of kids for other things, allergies, snoring, sleep apnea, lumps and bumps, lymph nodes, cysts, other weird little things that are in the head and neck area that encompass kind of the hodgepodge of other stuff.
So kids in surgery,
Yep.
that can be a little scary, especially I'm a mama at heart. So tell us a little bit about that experience. How do you help parents and kids cope with that? And then, kind of start to finish, what does that process look like?
We talk with them about what that looks like when we're talking about them in their office appointment. And obviously they get some counseling from the surgical teams and stuff here too. I think the hardest thing is it's just for kids, they don't really know what's going on. It's just kind of a disruption of their normal routine, which throws them for a loop a little bit. They don't get to eat or drink anything after midnight. And they're not exactly sure why mom's not sharing some
Right.
whatever with them. But, I think the fears are usually like the whole fear of the unknown and anesthesia and all that. And I try to alleviate those concerns on telling moms that, look, it's far riskier for you to drive to and from the hospital than it is for anything that we're doing there that day. It doesn't make sense in your heart, but, maybe your brain can reconcile that. And the reality is these young kids are some of the healthiest people that are coming through the hospital, and they do remarkably well. I'm usually more worried about them as a physician, post-operatively and going home and recovery and things than I am the day of surgery, as nerve-wracking as that day is. But, you have 2 ORs here, and your staff does a great job. It's not like Methodist where there's 24 ORs and it's, like the Iowa State Fair down there,
Yeah.
It's a little bit easier to get that
true.
personal touch, and for them to, feel like they have some time to feel like they're oriented and getting the answers they need to their questions.
I should ask too, do you have an age limit for how young you'll do surgery? Is there like an age range that we don't do here?
Yeah, I asked your anesthesia team about that, and they're pretty much open to whatever I think is reasonable. It's been my experience that generally we don't like to do procedures on children under the age of 6 months. And by that, I mean, like ear tubes and things of that nature. And it's rare for kids under 6 months to need ear tubes. But I think that, we're going to probably develop a few new things here with my coming and try to up the game a bit and do some things here that we've never done before. But I think pushing some of those envelopes aren't on my to-do list, So generally we don't do tubes under the age of 6 months, in my opinion, and we don't do tonsils and adenoids under the age of 2 years. And those are just kind of set in stone, general surgery, outpatient surgery kind of things. There's got to be some extenuating circumstances for that. And those kids have higher complication rates and should potentially be done in a different facility with other monitoring and things like that.
So as a mom and just as a parent, what are some things that I should be aware of beyond just an ear infection or maybe just ear infection? What are those red flags that maybe I need to look for as a parent where it would be then appropriate to seek care from you?
Yeah, I know. I have people ask me that sometimes, and I guess that's why I went to medical school, right? But it's difficult. The head and neck area is very complicated. There's a lot of overlap. I think moms have a good gestalt or intuition when something's not right with their kid. But, common things happen commonly. You have an ear infection or sinus infection or whatever. But, if your kid's temp's going out of control or they're not acting right or whatever, you can get complications from these infections that can spread to other areas or things, and whether it's your eye or your brain or your this or that. And so I think moms are pretty intuitive that, hey, this isn't just a regular ear infection or whatever. But I can't say that there's a top 3 things that I would say, hey, look out for this. I would say that, one of the things we commonly run into with the tonsil kids is a kind of a tonsillitis gone bad, and they'll get an abscess around one of their tonsils, and they're just not getting better. And that sort of is like the red flag there is it just is like one side is painful, and all of a sudden their voice is getting really kind of pressured, kind of because so much swelling and stuff in there. And so that's something when I talked to a mom and they said, yeah, he's just tonsillitis, but now that one side is just killing him. His voice sounds funny. It's like, oh no, we might have a tonsil abscess, and that needs attention. What
are some things parents should have on hand at home, or some of your tried and true tips?
Yeah, but despite the Band-Aids and thermometer trick, that everybody has to see what's going on, is swimmer's ear, common condition, can sometimes be remedied with rubbing alcohol or white vinegar. That can sting sometimes, and you certainly don't want to use that in a kid who has ear tubes or a hole in their eardrum. That's a contraindication for that because it hurts so much. But that can be something that can work to help with a swimmer's ear. Or even just after swimming, a lot of people will put some rubbing alcohol in kids' ears to dry it out as a preventative. That's kind of the active ingredient in those swimmer's aid drops that they sell for $8 a bottle. Nosebleeds, you can stop with Afrin usually. It's a vasoconstricting or a decongestant nasal spray. They make a milder strength depending on the age of the kid, but that's something when parents call me after hours and they can't get their nosebleed to stop, we'll advise them to use some of that before they go into the ER, and sometimes that can be quite helpful. But there aren't a lot of other things I can think of off the top of my head.
What about ear pain?
Mm-hmm.
Like, are there other ways, besides your Tylenol and ibuprofen, et cetera? Like, I know I always give my kids, a hot washcloth or, one of those little rice bags, anything like that. Do you get asked that question ever?
I do. The question that I would get on ear pain is, my grandpa used to blow smoke in my ear and stuff like that.
Oh,
and
really?
Sure, I've heard that.
We used to hear a lot of that. Usually you hear that from people who are in their 30s and 40s, that their grandpa blew smoke in their ear. I can't say that... that might qualify as a stupid human trick. I don't know. But no, there really isn't. The other weird thing about ear pain in the head and neck, again, that complicated anatomy, is that you can have nerves from your throat that give you referred pain into your ear or from a tooth, and you're sitting there with an ice pack on your ear, and it's actually coming from your tonsil, And so I'm all for symptomatic cares for kids if it makes them feel better to have a humidifier or an ice pack on their throat or a warm pack on their ear. But in reality, it kind of depends on where that problem is.
Good to know. What about adolescents and teens? I don't think about adolescents as teens as coming in for tubes or maybe not tonsils and adenoids as much, but maybe they do. So what particular issues are you seeing in those older kids?
I see a lot of moms who, and not just moms, but a lot of times it's moms that are bringing their teens in because they're not sure that they're hearing correctly. They're just not listening, or is this because they had a prior history of ear tubes? And we do sometimes find some underdiagnosed hearing losses in some of these kids, or holes in their eardrum, resulting from lots of ear infections or things. We also are still dealing with a few lagging tonsil issues and tonsil and adenoid issues in those kids, and then also sneaking into a little bit of the development of allergies and allergic conditions and that sort of a thing. But yeah, there's kind of a hodgepodge of that in between the pediatric years and then what we see in the adult years. But yeah, a lot of ears and hearing things usually.
Let's briefly talk about adult ENT issues and what are some reasons adults might come to see you.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot more sinus stuff that the adults come see us for. That seems to be one of their big things, and whether it's they don't breathe well through their nose, or we're talking about deviated septums or their sinus conditions or their allergies. That's a real common one. Adults are also coming in for a variety of things that's where we're seeing more of lumps and bumps and lesions and tumors and growths, and whether it be saliva glands or other places, they're worried about throat cancer or their voice or, and a lot more hearing. And it gets really diverse in the adult population, The older it's more just, earwax and grandma can't hear, and things. But yeah, there's quite a bit in the adult population, quite a bit more diversity.
Mm-hmm.
We never asked you last time about Q-tips.
Oh,
How does the ENT feel about Q-tips?
Q-tips.
Yeah.
And ear candling. I'm sure you've seen that one before too.
Right. Yeah, we get asked about that. We see a lot of Q-tip related injuries. And so I think it's pretty easy for most ENTs to say, yeah, don't use Q-tips and that sort of a thing. I mean, as far as being able to extract wax from your ear, they probably don't do that good of a job. And they have a tendency to maybe push more down in there. Some people get pretty aggressive with them too and irritate their ear canal and cause outer ear infections and things of that nature. So I tell people, if you're going to need to get your ears cleaned out, you're going to need to get them cleaned out whether you use a Q-tip or not. So Q-tip probably doesn't make that much difference for people. And that being said, my wife uses one like every day. And just, she'll look at it when she does it and smile at me, knowing that I'm just going to think that's adorable.
Yep.
But I would say candling that you asked me about, that was a kind of a...
It was a trend there for a while,
It
wasn't
was.
it?
It actually came out clear back when I was in residency, I think, and we were very intrigued by it. So we kind of did a little mini study on it. I couldn't believe a patient brought them in and I said, so you shove this in your ear and you light it on fire, And so we were burning them inside their ear and then one that we just were holding in the air, and they both had the same amount of wax in them, you know. So then I think they kind of debunked that, but then I think I saw some later publications where they say that it does something else to, re-equilibrate something. I don't know what it would be.
Yeah. Not a lot of good medical evidence there to say that it's
We did see
working.
some people with some burns,
Oh, gosh.
from the whatever. So I'm not so sure that the benefits outweigh the risks, but I'm certainly one of those guys that have enough gray hairs that I don't know everything. I know what I don't know, but I don't think that it helps with wax.
There we go. Not something you're regularly using at home yourself.
No, I would love nothing more to never clean earwax out again. So if it worked, I'd tell everybody to do it. Just go down and get the candle down there at the 5 and Dime store.
Yep. Head down to Bonus.
There you go.
Funny.
So Dr. Rinehart, at Cass Health, you're here at the AMC Surgery Clinic. So tell us a little bit about your schedule and what you do there.
Yeah, so right now I'm working Mondays and Tuesdays. Predominantly that's clinic. About every other Monday is an OR day, depending on the number of cases that we have. And right now they have me loaned out on Thursdays to go to Clark County Hospital. That's just getting started, and we'll see how that goes. It's kind of a volume thing, I think, as far as adding time, depending on how busy I'm getting and how that's going to play out. But right now, 2 days a week. They do know how to get a hold of me in between times, I found.
That's good. That's good. Do you have, something that you just love? Do you have a particular passion within ENT work?
Having a career of 20 years or whatever, that's changed dramatically for me over time. When I trained in Iowa City, head and neck, they were a big head and neck cancer surgery program. So some of the big, huge head and neck cancer cases and the big reconstructive cases, and to take someone and to try to cure them of cancer and do these gigantic cases with really intricate anatomy, that was really fulfilling to me for a long time. There's a point in time in every head and neck surgeon's life where that quits becoming so interesting.
Sure.
And then I got more interested in really detailed ear surgeries and the anatomy of the temporal bone and the mastoid bone. And we do some complicated drilling procedures and ear reconstruction and eardrum replacement type thing. It's just really neat anatomy. I really enjoyed that for a long time. We're going to start being able to do a little bit more of those things here over time. Maybe not to that whole level, but, some really cool ear surgeries. Now I'd say probably I really enjoy just a little more of the bread and buttery stuff. I've had the ability to do this long enough that I can see I just saw 2 people the other day, and ear tubes are about the easiest thing that I do. But a mom came in and she was practically in tears. She said their kid started walking the afternoon that I put her tubes in on their kid, And another mom said her kid started talking for the first time the day that we put the tubes in, And although I didn't do much, that's a big deal. It's a big deal to a parent. I mean, that's something you write down in the book,
Oh,
Right.
you remember that moment forever.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that it happened, that day made them realize that this was a significant health thing, even though it wasn't that big of a thing, really, So I enjoy being part of that in people's lives. But fun surgery now for me, probably be sinus surgery. I think that's pretty cool stuff. Neat anatomy, cool new tools. We can do it more minimalistically. People are always shocked when I tell them that I'm not, breaking their nose and shoving splints up in there and thinking something that, Grandpa Joe told them from the 50s,
Right. Yeah.
That's come a long ways and that, it makes a difference. So, yeah, I'm just happy to be here. I appreciate the opportunity. I've worked in a lot of hospitals. I like your hospital. I think I told you before that I think you guys have a great culture here. I think that one of the things that makes me be good is being surrounded by staff that are really helpful and want to be here and want to make a difference. I'm only as good as the least common denominator. I used to think I was Superman back in the day when I was young and full of whatever and vinegar and and that I was in control of everything. I realized over time how much of a difference my staff makes and all those ancillary people along the way for the actual product. And I think you guys have the ability to, I really believe you have the ability to do great things here because your facility is great and the culture is really good. And so I'm happy to mesh into that. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, and we're glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for spending time with us on this episode of the Cass Health Podcast. For more information about Dr. Rinehart, visit us online at casshealth.org. Thanks for listening.